Previously on Rhonda's Rewind.
This is your life, Rhonda Burchmore.
The doors would open and out came legendary choreographer and star. I'm talking about Tommy Tune. And the last thing I remember him saying was, "See you on Broadway." Well, I'm sure you're all dying to find out what happened next. So on today's episode, I am sharing my journey to Broadway with legendary Tommy Tune in the stage adaptation of the MGM classic Easter Parade. Whilst in London, when I was doing Hot Shoe Shuffle, I was introduced to Wally Harper at a dinner party. Now, Wally was quite the legend of musical direction on Broadway. He'd been involved in shows such as Grand Hotel 9, My One and Only, starring Tommy Tune, Irene, Brigadoon, Stephen Sondheim's Company, just to mention a few. He was also responsible for Barbara Cook's hugely successful comeback, and Barbara and I became great mates after Wally introduced us. Well, Wally and I hit it off and we became great friends. And in 1996, I would hook up with him on a family holiday in New York. Well, Wally insisted on trying to hook me up with Tommy Tune, who was a Broadway legend. He was not only an extraordinary actor, but he was a singer, a dancer, a Broadway director, a producer, choreographer, and had won at least 10 Tony Awards. And he was also very, very tall. What I didn't realize was that Tommy was casting a secret project. Wally was going to organize a coincidental meeting and advise me to look $1 million. Now, the plan was for me to go to Wally's apartment, and just as I was leaving, who would knock on the door but Tommy Tune, who would have a music session with Wally. It was like, bingo, when the two of us met. I mean, the height, the charm. He was immaculately groomed, articulate, absolutely gorgeous. Wally went, "I knew you two would hit it off," and oh my goodness, it was one of those incredible meetings. Now, at this point, I didn't realize that Tommy's Hush Hush project was going to be the stage adaptation of the MGM classic Easter Parade, which of course starred Fred Astaire, Judy Garland, and Ann Miller. When I was talking to Tommy, I mentioned that I'd understudied Ann Miller in Sugar Babies in London. His eyes lit up. Well, the very next day, I would have a serious meeting with Phil Osterman, who was going to be directing Easter Parade. I thought it went okay, and I flew back to Melbourne with the family. And then the next thing I know, I got a phone call asking if I would be interested in playing the Ann Miller role, and could I get on a flight back to New York to start to develop the show. Well, it had always been my dream to perform on Broadway, and I thought, my goodness, it is finally coming true. Now, the next thing required would be a visa. Now, I cannot tell you how difficult that is to get a working visa to perform on Broadway. Oh my goodness. It took months and months of paperwork, red tape. I had such a campaign. I had so many incredible Australians behind me. I'm talking about Ken Broziak, who brought the Beatles to Australia. I had politicians. I had Andrew Peacock. I had Lady Viola Tate. I had so many incredible people to write letters to try to get that visa. It was crazy. Well, the Sisters of Irving Berlin, who was the most extraordinary composers of American songbook ever, they controlled the rights of all the publishing. And it was quite exceptional that they would, for the first time ever, allow the whole catalogue of Irving Berlin's work to be used potentially in this new project. Well, I would return back to New York to start rehearsals. Of course, Tommy Tune was going to play the Fred Astaire role. Sandy Duncan, gorgeous Sandy, she was going to play the Judy Garland role. And I, of course, was going to play the Ann Miller role. Well, my first big show-stopping production number was going to be Alexander's Ragtime Band. And we had started, doing the most incredible choreography. I felt, this is just going to be magic. And as a matter of fact, I have got a version which I had the pleasure of doing on Midday with Kerry Ann Kennelly with gorgeous Jeff Harvey conducting. Here it is.
Alexander's Ragtime Band. Come on and hear, it's the best band in the land. They can play a bugle like you never heard before. So natural that you wanna go to war. That's just the bestest band what I am. Oh my honey lamb, come on along, and let me take you by the hand. Up to the man, who's the leader of the band. And if you care to hear that Swanee River play, come on and hear Alexander's Ragtime Band. Oh my honey, better hurry and let's begin. Whoops! Ain't you going to the leader man, the ragged meter man? Come and listen, to a classical band. Watch speeches, grandstand, brass bands. Ain't you coming along? Come on, Jeff! Woo! Come on, boys! They can play a bugle call like you never heard before. That's just the bestest band what I am. Oh my Carrie Ann, come on along, and let me take you by the hand. Up to the man, who's the leader of the band. And if you care to hear that Swanee River play in ragtime, come on and hear. Come on and hear Alexander's Ragtime Band.
Well, rehearsing with Tommy Tune was quite a master class. He was a perfectionist. We talk about workhorse. We never stopped. There was never, a lunch break. That was never heard of, or any kind of break. We worked straight through morning through to evening. He would just make us keep on going over and over stuff until he liked something that was created in that room. After we'd blocked through pretty much the show in New York, I flew back to Australia. Yeah, it was an uncertain time because there was no times, there was no theatres, there was what was going to happen with this. I would then commit to Red Hot and Rhonda, which was, of course, the last time we saw Tommy when they did This Is Your Life, and he came out only to announce and surprise the dickens out of me when he said, yes, Easter Parade is going ahead. Australian producer John Frost would come on board as a producer and wanted to do a workshop of Easter Parade in Sydney. Well, rehearsals began in Sydney and Tommy's creative vision was inspired. But, he took on so much. Not only was he playing the leading role, but he was also directing and choreographing this piece, wanting to control, everything, and as a perfectionist, he used to kind of put me, it was like, set and forget Rhonda, put me and say, we'll work on your numbers later. So a lot of that, the material for that workshop, I was kind of creating myself.
Don't call us, we'll call you.
Look how we fit. We've got the same inside leg.
I thought that one went out with a horse and buggy. Is every man in Earth wrong, mate? Or just you? Crackers, John, every blow that messes I step off the boat.
Listen, this is strictly business.
A man chases a girl until she catches him. He runs after a girl until he's caught. He fishes for a girl until she's landed him. It all comes out exactly the way she thought. Uncertain, he tags along behind. Uncertain, till she makes up his mind. A man chases a girl until she catches him. But don't run too fast while you were saying no. And once you've caught him, don't ever let him go.
Sit here, slow. Keep going. Keep going.
Second AD, Stogie's a very lovely fellow.
You know something, Hannah? So is Don. A man chases a girl until she catches him. He runs after a girl until he's caught. He fishes for a girl until she's landed him. It all comes out exactly the way she thought. Uncertain, he drags along behind. Uncertain, till she makes up his mind. A man chases a girl, but don't run too fast while you were saying no. And once you've got him,
You know what, Nadine? We gotta have lunch. Something's cheap.
but very important, be sure and make him think it was all his idea. Once you've got him, don't ever let him go.
The tap numbers were extremely difficult, nearly impossible to do. I remember him going and saying, have a look at Ann Miller and do that. And oh my gosh, one of the most amazing tap dancers ever to kind of self-learn off a video. Because Tommy would say, once we get it on Broadway, we'll work further. But I still had to go out and do something. And I remember Wally Harper, my beautiful musical director friend, was a great tapper himself, and he used to teach me these little combinations under the piano. But that was the Shake and the Blues number, and then of course Heat Wave. We're having a heat wave, and that was going to be a new addition to the show too. And I was going to do this extraordinary number, coming on and being lifted on the stage by all these apes, and then jump down and do my little tap number.
There from island to cruise that it's so hot the man sails around.
media interest was enormous in Australia because, of course, here are we starting to, create a potentially Broadway show right here in Sydney. I would get to, of course, go on my favourite Bert Newton's show and have a bit of a chat about it all. And on one occasion, I would go on with Tommy himself.
The music has finally become available, and they passed it to me. The Berlin Sisters. Irving Berlin's music has been kept under wraps for years, and finally they've decided to let it go, and we're going to make a big Broadway musical.
Wonderful. With Sandy Duncan too?
And Sandy Duncan, yes.
When do you hope to open, Tommy?
Oh, I would love to open next Easter. That would be my dream. We're waiting for a theater. Every theater on Broadway is booked right now.
Now, the workshop in Australia would be at the Footbridge Theatre in Sydney, and before we knew it, we had news that they'd secured the Marriott Theatre on Broadway, and I was soon to be packing my bags to head back to New York. Now, my darling friend Bert Newton, one of his most favourite movies was Easter Parade. And I remember on one occasion he asked me to sing with him the title song from Easter Parade.
Never saw you look quite so pretty before. Never saw you dress quite so handsome once more. I could hardly wait to keep our date this lovely Easter morning, and my heart beat fast as I came through the door. For in your Easter bonnet, with all the frills upon it, you'll be the grandest fella in the Easter parade. I'll be all in clover, and when they look you over, we'll be the proudest couple in the Easter parade. On the avenue, Fifth Avenue, the photographers will snap us, and you'll find that we're in the photograph reel. Oh, I could write a sonnet about your Easter bonnet and of the guy I'm taking to the Easter parade. Down there, Bertie, what I've got for you.
Go! Wow. Well, I have one question, and that is, who gets the other one?
Now, on arrival back to New York, they'd secured the Houston Theatre for an out-of-town kind of tryout. Bob Mackie was going to be doing the costumes. I had my fittings. Oh my goodness, Bob Mackie. I adore Bob Mackie. So we were under the pump to get this presentation ready for the Berlin Sisters to approve, and the other backers, of course, as to see whether the production was going to go ahead. During that time in New York, I was lucky enough to visit my dear old friend Ann Miller, who was performing in the Paper Mills production of Follies, and I told her the news that I was going to be doing her role in the stage adaptation, and my goodness, to have her blessing and hugs and wishing me all the best was really, really special. We moved into the Houston Theatre only to find out the floor was like rubber. It was made of rubber. And when the lights would go on it, it kind of got really soft and bendy. Now, anyone that knows tap dancing, you should have a really good, ideally wooden floor to make the taps, resonate. And I was wearing, and I still have them today, my beautiful tap shoes that Ann Miller gave me. My goodness, I remember busting about 3 heels just in rehearsals because, as you can imagine, the taps just kind of sank into the rubber rather than bounced off. Well, during that same period, we would only have 1 day off a week, which was the Sunday, and Tommy invited me to be his date to the Tony Awards at Radio City, where he was going to announce, because he was a presenter, he was going to announce that Easter Parade was coming to Broadway the following year, starring his co-star from Down Under, Little Old Me, and Sandy Duncan. My goodness, that night was quite special. The dinner after the Tonys, I would be on a table with the likes of Angela Lansbury, Jane Seymour, Gregory Hines, just to name a few. The day had come for the presentation, and the Berlin sisters arrived with more diamonds, I can tell you, than a South African mine. My goodness, even their walking canes were diamond-studded. Who has a diamond-studded walking cane? Anyway, the workshop, we thought it all went swimmingly. I was going to return home to Australia and wait for, the dates and all systems go. The night before I would leave New York, Tommy would host a big soiree for the cast and crew of the show. I remember it being quite bizarre, arriving there and, clue was, his dog was running around with an Easter bonnet on, but that wasn't so bad. The thing was, I could not find Tommy. I was searching, where is Tommy? And no one would tell me. Only I would wander because I knew the apartment very well. I knew Tommy as a dear friend. I found him there in his bed on this huge emperor bed. It wasn't a king, it was an emperor. And there he was with all draped in white curtains, and he was in a white toga with a string quartet at the base of the bed and someone massaging his feet. Tommy did not want to speak. I said, Tommy, and the eyes were closed. It was like this he was in a trance. I remember thinking, something is not quite right. It was a bit like a David Lynch kind of scene out of one of his movies. It was like bizarre. Well, I would leave Tommy in his trance and walk out to those old cold streets of New York by myself, and I was just really upset that I'd actually not really got to say goodbye. It was just, call it, sixth sense or whatever. I just had this feeling of uncertainty. Well, it wasn't until a few months later I would receive a fax just saying Easter Parade is off. It had been announced in Variety. It wasn't going ahead. Apparently, the Berlin sisters were not happy the way the show was going and had pulled out. And so it was pretty much curtains for Easter Parade. Upon reflection, just the, experience of working with Broadway legends Tommy Tune and Sandy Duncan, and to work with my extraordinary darling friend Wally Harper was just so worth it. But, it wasn't meant to be. It was out of my control. And, of course, I was sad, but, I returned home to Australia to raise my glorious daughter Lexi and to do other projects here in Australia. But, you never say never, if, it's just one of those things that just didn't work out. It wouldn't be till about 2009 when I would see Tommy again. I went over to New York on holiday. We talked briefly about Easter Parade, but it was like, seeing an old friend. We laughed, we sang, we danced in his apartment. A lot had happened. Since then, Wally Harper, my darling Wally, had passed away, and Phil Osterman, the director, had died of a heart attack, and most of the team had gone. Well, Tommy and I, oh my goodness, it was, as I said, like seeing an old friend, and we hung out plenty of times. And the last visit, I remember he and his manager handing me over a script to a new stage adaptation he had in mind of doing, which was the Berkeleys of Broadway, and he wanted me to be his co-star, which is a really, really lovely thing, and I went away, heart full. recently I would receive 15 pieces of Tommy Tune's artwork. Yes, he was quite the artist, but he gifted me these pieces with the most beautiful note saying that how much he wants to work with me and how much he adores me. Who knows if I will ever work with Tommy Tune on Broadway. The business is such a roller coaster, but you know what? I am never gonna say never. I mean, the two tallest people in the universe. My goodness, it was fun working with you, Tommy Tune. Well, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. Now, if you did, I want you to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to keep more of Rhonda's Rewind coming. And if you like those stories, there's many more where they came from in my book, Legs 11. Oh yes, if you want a copy, you go to rhondaburchmore.com and I will sign you one and send it out to you. Till next time, bye-bye.